Welcome to Podcetera. Each episode is a journey of discovery as we delve into topics that pique our curiosity and yours. We feature in-depth interviews with fascinating individuals who have extraordinary stories to share.
I'm Renee Lego.
I'm Joelle Ludovich, and this
is Podcetera. Jeff Nucera has been working in unscripted storytelling for more than 2 decades, starting with 2 of the genre's most groundbreaking series, MTV's The Osbournes and Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica. Jeff may be best known for sorting Weird Al Yankovic's fan mail since 2001. His latest project is SHOWGALS, a feature-length documentary that tells the story of Tight and Nerdy, the world's first burlesque troupe devoted to Weird Al Yankovic. The film follows a group of Weird Al superfans on what might be their final tour. Jeff joins us to discuss his documentary, Weird Al and His Mail, and the reality of producing television. Jeff, it's been a long time since we talked. We went to school together back in the day, back in Philly. That's where all of us on this call met.
In the 90s. It was last century.
Yeah.
Good God.
Thanks for bringing that up. I want to start by having you intro yourself. Give us the Jeff Nucera log line.
I'm Jeff Nucera, and this is my log line.
It's waving.
Okay,
I approach all podcasts very unpreparedly.
Tell us about yourself, Jeff.
I am a writer, producer, rewriter, consultant, and pre-award-winning documentarian. Is that something?
That is something.
Okay.
Let's start with your latest project. It is SHOWGALS. And
it is SHOWGALS.
I love the idea, so I want you to tell us about it and how it came to be.
Thank you. SHOWGALS is a documentary about a troupe of burlesque dancers called Tight and Nerdy, and they perform to music by Weird Al Yankovic. It is a story of friendship and found family and nerddom that bonds us all together.
I'm waiting for Joelle to jump in.
Oh, yeah. So what are
Clunk. Sorry.
So what are some parallels between what you're working on or what you've sort of experienced with Showgirls, and how would you connect that with the LGBTQIA community? There you go. How's that for a question?
I like this question because I actually find...
Hold on. Closer to the mic.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
We know
hi.
that nice bassy.
Yeah.
Yes.
We want to hear you.
Hello. Yes. I think that, Weird Al is, although he's not a queer performer, I think that his messaging is amplified by the queer community in a way. He is a proud outsider. And for me growing up, I didn't quite put that together, but I knew that there was something very special about being proud of who you are and standing out and not blending in. And so a lot of queer people like myself are drawn to that message of self-acceptance. And again, it's not something he's doing maybe so obviously, but it is very clear once you start to pay attention that it's it's okay to be yourself. And the women in this documentary are kind of performing under that umbrella.
I know when we talked before, this wasn't your idea, but now you are producing it and directing it. So
I am.
Tell us how it came to be.
The founder of Tight and Nerdy, her name is Pickles Kintaro. She put this troupe together in around 2012, 2013, and came to LA to perform a few times, and I met her there. And at one point she reached out to me a couple of years after I met her and said, do you think there's a documentary in here somewhere? As a reality TV producer, people come up to me a lot and say, oh, you should film my work or whatever. And I'm like, nothing. No, never.
You should film me.
Yeah.
How come I'm not your reality subject?
Exactly. Oh, we have so much fun. It's so crazy. But so I was initially like, I don't know about this. But then I interviewed her over the phone, just sort of a little conversation with her. And then I talked with sort of 3 of her cohorts. And I was like, there is something really special here. And it's not, and it goes beyond the comedy of a Weird Al burlesque troupe. There is a story of family here. There is a story of finding each other and supporting each other, and like female empowerment and body positivity and all of the stuff that, like, you know, it means a lot to a lot of people, including myself. And so I was like, yeah, let's see what we can do. So I dragged my producing partner, Jonathan Ruane, into this. And here we are, so many years later. So many years.
How does the audience react to this burlesque troupe? It's a lot different than a lot of other troupes, right? This is pretty specific.
It is very specific. There is at least before COVID, there was a big nerdlesque movement. So there's like a lot of Star Trek, Star Wars themed burlesque, and this is, you know, even nichier, of course. But as Pickles will tell you, a lot of people will come to this show that have never seen a burlesque troupe perform before, myself included. I'd never been to a burlesque show. It's comedy, like the music's great. I'm a big fan of Weird Al, obviously, but the music's great. The performers are awesome. They are so fun. They're so funny, and they're so wonderful on stage. And they really, it just is so much fun. So the audience has a blast because they're also having a blast.
So you knew Weird Al Yankovic before you started making the documentary, correct?
Yes, that is right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you sort of stumbled onto this group then that was just happened to be performing to his music, or how did that sort of?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I was a fan of Al's, and, you know, growing up, and met him in the 90s, and then started working for him in the early 2000s, which was a dream come true. And then somewhere around 2013, a friend of mine from the UK, her name is Ludovica, she forwarded me this ad and was like, you have to go to this show. It's called the Al Stravaganza, being put on by Tight and Nerdy, and they're this troupe, and you have to go and you have to report back to all of the fans. And so I was like, okay, like, why not? So a few of my friends and I went, and I was like, what the hell is this? / it's the best.
Tell us where you are in the process of the film. When's it going to be ready?
That's a great question, Renee. Stop pressuring me. Oh, it'll be ready maybe by the end of the year. We'll have a cut. I don't know if it'll be ready. We have an assembly that is over 3 hours long currently. Our editor is right at this moment taking some time off while my producer and I sort of regroup and look at it as a whole and say, okay, these are the pieces that are working, these are the pieces that are not, and let's get this thing down to 80 or 90 minutes and make a movie.
The three of us are very, very familiar with documentary, and we understand the process of taking an enormous amount of footage that you have captured over years, lovingly.
135 hours of footage, not that I'm counting.
And many times on your own dime for that long process.
Correct.
Tell us about that process for you. This is your first time.
It is, and I hate it. I'm in that part of the process. Does that illustrate anything?
Yeah.
It's been a ton of fun. Like, I have experienced things and gone places and watched shows that I never would have otherwise. Met amazing people that were telling their stories. You know, I'm very grateful that they're all so open and. But what was the question? I'm sorry. My brain is mushy because I'm in all of this footage all the time.
A lot of people who've never made a doc don't understand that process, the arduous process.
That it's horrifying? Yes. You become an insane person as you're going through the footage. I mean, I am unstable, maybe at best right now. I'm watching this footage of these women all the time. And then yesterday I spoke to them on the phone 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week. So I'm picking up, like, I've been having conversations with them the whole time, and they're, you know, they haven't heard from me in months.
I had a hard time letting go of footage, you know, scenes that I loved, even though they didn't necessarily relate to telling the story. I just thought they were so important that somebody needs to see this. Yeah,
I think that maybe part of my reality TV training has cut me out of that. Like I am never allowed to be married to anything because it could just go away any minute. I can fight for things and I always lose, and it always doesn't matter. It'll matter more for the film, of course, but like, you know, a scene in Here Comes Honey Boo Boo, doesn't really matter.
It does to Honey Boo Boo, maybe.
Does it?
Honey Boo Boo.
Aye.
Now there's a family.
I've done some terrible things, Renee Lego.
Oh, so we do have to have another conversation.
Oh, are you not Renee Lego? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So if you want to jump off there.
Yeah, so I know, well, you are in the process of going through the footage now, Jeff, right? You said? So
Yes.
edit, yeah. Having someone else there to help with that process, which it sounds like you do, is good to sort of bounce things off of.
Our editor put together like an assembly, and she's an excellent editor, and this was very hard for her to do because we kept telling her, don't cut anything like it's going to be finished, because a ton of this stuff is going to go away. We just need to see it laid out as a story to see what's working, what's not, and even if like we have a movie here. So it was frustrating for her to sort of be like, well, I have to score it. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, oh God, like, don't, you know, it's just hard to sort of do it in that way because she's very used to very tight deadlines. We work together with her on reality TV shows where it's like, okay, in 3 weeks, we need like a full hour of television somehow. So for this, it was like, here's 12 weeks, give us, you know, as long as it is, whatever it is, let's just see what it looks like. And now we are able to see this 3-hour thing and just be like, okay, well, you know, here, let's pull 80, 90, 100 minutes out of this and see what happens. And that's the part I'm enjoying because it's like, get it out.
You are enjoying cutting it down, though.
For now, yeah. When it gets to be like 110 minutes and I need to cut another half hour out, I'm going to be real sad probably. But for now, I'm like, get it all out.
Do you have distribution for it yet? I mean, is there someone that you have to sort of answer to in terms of the cut that you do make?
Not really. No, we are fully independent right now. We ran a Kickstarter earlier this year that was successful, surprisingly enough for all of us, which is how we're affording to edit currently. We'll probably need to do a few more fundraisers, and we're applying for grants and that kind of thing to sort of secure some more funds for music clearance. Al has been very kind to us, but does not own the rights to his parodies. Those are with the original artists. So there's going to be some legwork to do once we get to that point and decide what's in the film and what's not.
Congratulations on like getting the funding. I mean, that's huge. Yeah, and that's like a huge first step.
Yeah, Kickstarter is hard, as it turns out. That was very much a full-time job that I was not expecting.
How long did it take?
Ours lasted 30 days, I think. It was, you know, weeks and weeks ahead of time, like preparing press and lining up interviews and just getting ourselves ready. And then every day we had to be online engaging with people and posting stuff and TikTok, and which I'm not a person who knows how to do that. So my partner luckily took on that role. And every day he'd be like, this is the trend today. And I'd be like, I don't know what any of this means. It doesn't make any sense, but sure, go ahead. And he would get, you know, we would get these views and get people over to us, over to our fundraiser. And then with 2 hours left to go, we hit our target.
Wow, that's great. And fundraising, I'm sure, has changed from 20 years ago when we were first starting out to now in some ways, right?
Yeah, you can bring it to the masses, which is great. People contributed from $1 on up to 10 grand. It was really cool to see everyone come together. I think we had 500 contributors to our Kickstarter, which was very, very cool.
Do you think a lot of these folks contributing were Weird Al fans?
Lots of Weird Al fans, lots of Burlesque fans.
So how would you compare going through this process of making the documentary to your time in reality TV? Some of the things that you learned, or
I mostly work in post-production for unscripted TV. Sometimes I'll go out in the field and do interviews and stuff. I really like interviewing people. Despite my behavior today in this interview, I'm really good at talking to people. I think, at least I like to think so. But in post-production, in these TV shows that I do, we have support. We have, it's more than just me and one other guy and an editor doing these things. So that can get frustrating at times, but it's also like nice to have, a team of 15 cutting 4 or 5 episodes at a time, and me just sort of overseeing that versus me hands and eyes on an Avid editing system trying to work it out with my brain and my partner's brain, and then giving it to an editor and going, can you fix this? Because I don't know what I'm doing.
When you and I were back at Temple, I, imagine
Last Century.
Yeah,
yes.
Last Century. I imagined that when you left to LA that you'd be a writer, and I imagined that you would be a sitcom writer. It just seemed like that's what he's going to do. I can see it. And then you went out
That's what I thought too. Weird.
You went out to LA and promptly got in the middle of the writer's strike. And now we're in the writer's strike again. So tell me about that move to LA. And, when you started out, everybody's got this idea of what they're going to do in Hollywood. Take us through that.
Yeah, a career found me. I didn't find this career. It was sort of like I got here just before that writer's strike happened. And I was working on a sketch variety show. I had somehow fell into like the awards show circuit, and so like I was PAing for big shows, like the TV Guide Awards. Anyway,
well, if you get the TV Guide, it is big. The young folks today don't know about it, but
I know a friend of mine worked at TV Guide. I don't know, in Pennsylvania somewhere. There was a office.
So jealous.
Yeah.
You had to like go to the TV Guide to see what was going to be on.
And
mean, I feel like I'm such a TV nerd too in that way. Like I have nostalgia for some of the old times.
You had
I loved a good TV Guide. It was so compact.
And you had the grid,
like packed with stuff. Yes. It was great. Those were the days. But yeah, so I was working these like weird stage shows, and then the team that was hiring me brought me over to a sketch variety show that they were trying to do for ABC. One of the producers on that show ended up as a showrunner on The Osbornes, which was, a reality sitcom at a time when that was not a term, really. It was a half-hour family sitcom just in the Ozzy Osbourne house. And that really appealed to me a lot. They didn't want to really lean on interviews the way competition series were doing it. They were shooting their 15, 16 hours a day. It was shot like a documentary.
So cinema verite style.
Yeah. It was shot doc style. And then we would just watch VHS tapes of the footage and make notes. And, I was an assistant that first season, and then got bumped up to a segment producer and story producer. And we did Osborne's and Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica, right around the same time.
Okay, we'll get to Nick and Jessica in a second, but let's talk about, so you were never actually on set, but you did mostly post.
Correct, yes.
So tell us about the process of culling through the footage.
I mean, it was pretty time consuming. I mean, we would watch probably, we would watch like 7 to 10 days worth of footage to get a 22-minute show out of it. And we had some guides. I mean, people would give us notes from the field and say, this is what's going on. This is the story, that we're following today. But there wasn't a lot of producer nudging back then. Like now, reality TV is a misnomer, of course. But back then it was doc style. So it
was the Wild West of reality.
It was. I mean, we were there when they woke up. We were there when the kids were cutting school. We were there when they went to bed at 3 a.m. Like we were just there all the time. Tapes would come back to us, and we would watch them on VHS like animals.
You were a part of, I'll call it a seminal moment in reality television. You know, you worked on the Osbornes, which was one of the early shows.
Yes.
And you also worked for Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica. And there is a very famous or infamous moment. Can you tell us about the tuna moment?
Yes. What I can tell you is, you know, The Osbournes was a huge hit at the time. I think it was MTV's biggest show ever up until that point. And then the same team set up cameras in Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson's house, I think like 6 months after they got married. So they were newlyweds, Nick and Jessica. And I remember very specifically the MTV exec coming over to our office and looking at the footage, and we were kind of still figuring out what the show was. And he was like, listen, if we can get 6 episodes out of this, we're fine. And then, you know, a couple days later, my boss found this chicken of the sea. Is this, you know, tuna or chicken? Is this fish or chicken moment from Jessica, who was so innocent and so lovely. and just, you know, she was silly and she was like Lucy, and just sort of like any thought that came into her head came out of her mouth. Like, and it was great.
It's great for reality, not great for her.
It's great for reality TV. Probably not great for her. She played it up, certainly, I'm sure. But like at that moment, we were like, oh, that's funny. And I have a moment like this over here, and she's sort of ditzy and whatever. And it was, for better or for worse, probably for worse. It was that era of dumb blondes, you know, being silly and just sort of, you know, it was that era before it turned mean, I think, but that certainly didn't help. I feel like
the exec producers were probably doubling down after that.
Yes, it was very much like, oh, well, anything that she says that's sort of dopey, let's go ahead and make it a moment. And you know, at the time it was funny because of that era, but looking back on it now, you know, I haven't seen that show in 20 years or whatever it is, but did it age well? Maybe not. I don't know. But at the time, I can say that we weren't trying to be dicks to her. That wasn't our intention. Like, she was having fun too, I think. I have not read her book, so I don't actually know that. And I don't want to speak for her. But I do know that she was not shy about saying those things forcefully and loudly and proudly on that show when the cameras were rolling.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point that you sort of bring up about like some of the things that were going on that show or other reality type TV shows that now people would find like really offensive.
I worked on this show called Girls Next Door, which was set at the Hefner Playboy Mansion, which in the years that have flown by, we've heard many tales from that mansion that are not great. I was, again, mostly in post. I wasn't on set for a lot of that stuff. I wasn't exposed to it, but I do know that it was not a kind show. Whereas Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica, we had love for each other and for the people on our set. I don't believe that there was love in that mansion. I don't believe there was love for our cast. I don't believe there was respect for our cast, not from our end, but from like the heads of that show. Weren't very kind. And so many of us left after season 1. I tried to leave in the middle of season 1, but kind of couldn't get out. I've been listening to, not to plug another podcast, but the Girls Next Door stars Holly and Bridget. They have a podcast called Girls Next Level, where they are being very honest about what was going on at the time, and a lot of it's not great.
Good for them.
Good for them, yes, 100%. And, you know, some of it I knew and some of it I didn't. And some of it, you know, I'm hearing stories about the executive producer who was abusive to us in the office. Nothing compared to what they were going through, of course, but was just a monster. And then hearing them talk about how much of a monster he was to them, I'm like, yeah, that tracks, of course. It wasn't fun. Osborne's was fun. Newlyweds was fun. And it had a spirit of just like, oh, let's just all kind of hang out and watch this. Whereas Girls Next Door felt exploitative and like kind of gross.
A lot of people have come out with stories, especially after Me Too, of treatment on sets, bad working conditions for people. You've been working in reality for 20
Yes.
years. Have you felt like you were treated right?
Sometimes. Some shows are better than others, for sure. And look, again, I'm in post-production mostly, where the conditions are much less harsh in general. That doesn't mean they're not hard. That doesn't mean I didn't work for some really shitty people. I know that the field is a different monster, and I can't speak to that a lot, but I know that like there's been some stuff. Like I know that, I know women who were in their office in positions of power. They were executive producers, they were co-executive producers, and a person would come into their office and flop their junk out onto their desk, and it's like, okay, what are you doing? And nothing gets done about it, and people laugh it off like, oh well, that's just how he is, and it's like, no, that's not how he is. That person is dead now, and so people are monsters, kind of in any industry probably, but in TV production, because it's freelance, a lot of it, people just move from show to show and there's no real
accountability,
repercussions. Yeah. And it's just like, well, I won't hire them again, but they'll get hired somewhere. Like that guy worked a lot. And he was crazy, obviously. There are some terrible stories. There's terrible, work environment stories that, not to harp on Girls Next Door, but that guy was a monster, also dead, but like didn't give any shits about anyone except for himself, and was filled with rage and filled with anger and filled with hatred for everyone around us.
I don't want people listening to think it's all bad in Hollywood.
It is not.
The lies and stories that are being made up, and I won't even go into it, but it's not all bad.
It's not all bad. No, it's a lot of fun. But since the question was about terrible things, I'm going to talk about terrible things.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be still working in the industry if it was that horrible, right?
Correct. As you get deeper in and more confident, you can suddenly start to choose your projects, and you can choose who you are working with. Like I'm very fortunate that I get to hire people I know and trust and like, and hang out with, even if we're not working together. Like, you find your sort of family at work, and that makes it a lot easier, even when you're in a situation where it's maybe, you've got a boss or a network that doesn't understand or isn't kind. You can at least get through it together and trauma bond over it.
Yeah.
Is most of your work like gig work? Are you moving from project to project, or what's the longest you've been on a project?
I did 5 seasons of a show called Gigolos, which was a half-hour comedy, sexy comedy for Showtime.
I've seen it.
Yes.
I had to watch and see Jeff's credit.
I can just text you my name and it's sort of the same.
I felt like that was being a supportive friend. Like, oh, look, I'm watching the credit roll.
You know what? I appreciate that.
I don't get a credit roll for my day job, so I'm living vicariously through your.
We should get credit rolls for our day job.
Every night as I go to sleep, I see your name roll up.
Shouldn't everybody have a credit
That's
roll?
funny.
This is I think I'm on to something.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to your answer.
Yeah, so Gigolos, that was, an example of a show that was a ton of fun. Had a blast doing it. It was at a company that I really enjoyed and I've worked with before and since. We had a pretty tight-knit crew that just came back year after year after year, and it was a ton of fun. And then after the show ended, everything gets ruined, always.
Right.
Not to be dark again, but one of the Gigolos was a... do we want to talk about this? I mean, okay.
You can go there.
You're like, we're gonna. Well, he... let me just say, every reality television cast member I have worked with in my 20 years, this guy would have been at the very bottom of the list of people I would have suspected to do this. He ended up during COVID doing mushrooms and murdering the woman he was with.
Jeez.
Which is obviously terrible and heartbreaking and awful and just broke me a lot, broke a lot of people a lot, I think. You know, we all had a different experience with him, and it was always peaceful and lovely, and he was very gentle with all of us. And then to hear this from him is just awful. He's in prison now, and rightfully so.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody kill anybody on mushrooms. So what kind of mushrooms was this guy taking?
I don't know. I don't know. And he, you know, that was one of the shows where I would go out and interview the cast. I was in the field only for interview days. I was not there during like any of the scene work, especially the gross scene work. But I would go out there 2-3 times a season and interview the guys and talk to them. And you know, I had a rapport with all of them. And so for this to happen was really astounding to me. I'd never known a murderer before. Have you?
Well, now I'm 1 degree away from.
Joelle?
No.
You spent a lot of time in Philly. No.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Where do we want to go from here?
Moving on.
You told us about your worst reality star. Who was your favorite? Who is the delight to work with?
What a good question. Who is a delight? Everyone else is a delight.
Anyone who doesn't murder their girlfriend.
Anyone who doesn't murder is a delight as far as I'm concerned. Ozzy Osborne was pretty iconic. He was pretty cool. It was awesome to see him be so himself, even at his worst. You know, when he was relapsing and drinking again and back on meds and stuff, it was really an honest portrayal. And I thought that was really important and really interesting back then. And I still think that like there's a reason why so many reality shows kind of don't matter anymore, because they're not honest, they're not real, they're not, and that is palpable. Like I feel like that comes across to audiences who can sense that, like you know when someone's being honest or not. And so when you see that, when you see a show like The Osbournes, which doesn't come out along very often, you know, it's why Jersey Shore was such a hit. Those people were themselves. You know, for better or for worse, it was a hit because there was a ton of just raw honesty from those people coming across. And it's fun to watch. It's interesting to watch, as opposed to, you know, Kardashians have been on the air for 255 years-ish, but it's all fake.
Well, it's very, very, I won't say scripted, but constructed around them.
Some might say scripted.
Well, that
yes.
too. But huge. That show took off like
it is huge,
Kardashians,
yes.
and then their own show after that. I don't know, something about them.
Yeah, but it's not special. There's something about it that's not special somehow. It may be a hit, but I don't know. It's not charming to me. Am I old? Does that make me elderly? Okay.
Well, you're not the audience, right? Are you? Well, I don't know.
I'm not the audience. I'm not any audience, probably.
Do you watch any reality television?
I don't, unless I'm getting paid to do so. I did watch Jury Duty, which I thought was excellent.
Joelle, have you seen it? Jury Duty? Oh, put it on your list.
No.
Put it on your list.
Mm-mm.
It's an excellent
But I've heard about
piece
it.
of art.
Yep.
And it's not mean, which was my concern going into it. I thought it was going to be similar to like Joe Schmo, where everyone's just sort of pranking this poor schlub. But on this show, yes, they're pranking someone, but it's all in good fun, and that really comes across, and it's really cool, I think. And then before that, the last reality show I watched was from like 10, 15 years ago called Small Town Security, which the first episode of that, if you can find it somewhere streaming, please watch. It's maybe the best half hour of television, scripted or non-scripted, in quite a while.
Okay. It is called Small Town Security.
Yes.
Small town.
And filmed in what
security?
small town? Do you remember?
It's filmed in Ringgold, Georgia, I believe.
I'm going to toss to Joelle because I've taken a lot of airtime.
Hi again. It's me. So who are some of the, sort of celebrity type folks that you've encountered in LA?
Does Weird Al count?
Well,
I
sure.
technically encountered him in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Outside of work, I've met a variety of lovely people, like Marsha Wallace was a highlight. Probably the biggest one I met, just sort of like going about my business, was Betty White. I was in an elevator. I was still a production assistant. It was really early on in my life in LA, and the sort of unspoken rule is to kind of just leave celebrities alone. But I was in an elevator with Betty White alone, and I was like, I have to speak to her or I will regret it for the rest of my life. And I just told her how funny she is and was, and how much of a fan I was. And she was so warm and so sweet and so lovely. And she's like, thank you so much. And it's so nice to hear. Like, she just was as sweet as you wanted her to be. It was very lovely.
Oh, that's sweet.
I only get weird encounters. You get, like Fabio asking me if I was going to do another set at the gym.
And were you?
I can't believe it's not butter. That's who I meet.
Wow.
I once had to escort Emo Phillips across a busy intersection to an event at Hollywood and Highland. And that was among the weirdest things I've ever had to do.
I met Tim Robbins in an elevator in New York.
How was that?
It was a little intimidating. It was me and someone else in a building where this person had an office and he had an office, and he was in the elevator. Just said hi. How are you doing? Like that. He was nice. Small talk.
Nice. I once yelled at Louis Anderson, but I thought he was someone else, and I have felt terrible about it ever since.
Should we apologize?
He's not still alive. It is too late for me to apologize.
All right. Well, I happened to be at a concert, and I went into the bathroom, and there was a very, very intoxicated Cloris Leachman.
Yes.
Stumbling drunk. I was like, wow, this might be might be it for me. This is probably going to be my greatest celebrity encounter ever.
Did you engage with her?
No, I was like just kind of starstruck. Didn't expect her to be in the bathroom, but boy, she tied one on for sure.
Man. I was at my friend's. My friend is a game show nerd to the point where he will have parties and he'll play like real life Pyramid or Password. And I was playing Password, and part of the celebrity panel was Mindy Cohn, just at his house. Like, Mindy Cohn's just at his house, and she and I got to match, and then we became friendly that day. She doesn't keep in touch though. Weird.
That sounds fun though.
I think this is a good time for me to ask my random husband question of the podcast. And I should probably have some music that goes along with this.
Yes.
But my husband's random question, and it's a good segue into Weird Al. What does Weird Al smell like?
He smells like Nirvana.
Teen Spirit?
No, Nirvana. He smells...
the grunge Nirvana?
Yeah. Yeah. He smells clean, I think. I usually see him after shows, and he's like freshly showered and smells lovely. Yeah. Thank you for asking.
I thank my husband for asking.
Still casually friends with him, and
he is my greatest employer. I am a lifelong fan, as you know, and around about a year after I moved to LA, they asked me if I would be able to take a part-time job sorting his fan mail, and I've been doing that ever since.
Does he get a lot of fan mail?
He does get a lot of fan mail. Back then he got a ton more because it was, pre-social media, and if people wanted to like order stuff, they had to order it through the fan club, like with a paper check and like a letter and an order form, because that's how long ago it was. Nowadays, there's a lot of, interaction on social media. So like the stuff that comes in is mostly autograph requests or just like pledges of love, not in a gross way, but just in a like really sweet, like, you have meant a lot to me over the past 40 years. My dad listened to you, and now I listen to you, and now my kid listens to you. Like it's a lot of that kind of stuff, which is really cool to see.
How's his response to that? I mean, do you like read him his letters, or does he read them, or what?
All I'm doing is like, if there's sort of just a generic autograph request, I can like send that out. But if it's something that needs to be, more personalized, I will pass those along to him. He'll sign stuff and like throw them in the mail himself. I give him all the letters that come in, except for the song ideas. If people write in with song parody ideas, I have to send those back.
Oh, you have to send them back to them?
I do. I send them back to them with a little form letter that says, go somewhere else with this.
Aw.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
Have you ever written him a letter?
I used to send him like birthday cards in the 90s, last century.
Before you were opening his mail, or you slipped in your cards into the mail that you were sorting?
That's funny. Here's mine.
Yep.
Sandwich it between a couple others.
He'll never
That's
notice.
Funny. That's funny.
My own song ideas in there. No.
Yeah.
You had a question, Joelle, about Weird Al.
I did.
Is it about how he tastes? I don't know.
No, thank you.
Okay.
While she's looking for the question, how about I ask you about your favorite Weird Al song?
Oh gosh, that is hard
It's
to pick.
hard. I'm sure it's going to be hard for you because you're like, would you consider yourself like a mega fan?
I would, yes. I would indeed. I don't know how many times I've seen him live, but it's probably in the 3 digits by now.
I would love to go to a show with you.
You should come to a show with me.
Let's do that. Let's make it so. Number one.
All right, next tour.
Okay.
A Weird Al show?
Yeah. Tons of fun.
It'll be my first. So I have not seen him.
How did you escape the 90s knowing me without going to a Weird Al show?
I don't know. Remember, I didn't live in LA that long, so.
But even in college, when we were in
I don't know. I was hanging out with.
Yes.
We won't go into those stories. This part won't make it on the podcast.
No, I remember him.
Is that the spinoff?
Joelle remembers him too.
I remember him.
Will you be interviewing him on this podcast? Because that's all I want in my life right now.
I want you to make that film with me. If we're talk about reality,
well, it's got to start.
I won't
start with this.
Joelle, I can tell you would blow your mind.
All right. You can tell me off the show.
Sex symbol?
Oh, what?
Isn't that your question?
No.
Oh,
no.
Maybe this.
That's not my question. I don't think.
I have questions.
Might be your
this
question.
Might be another husband question. Sorry, there might be a double round here. From my husband, is Weird Al a sex symbol?
Is he a sex symbol? For some, yes. Judging by the letters I have seen, yes. I have seen some letters where women are very into him.
Since you've known him all these years, tell us something that we don't know about Weird Al.
What don't you know about Weird Al? He is... Everyone knows this, but I'm going to say it anyway. He's the nicest man on the planet, to the point where it's almost alarming. I get very nervous around him because I feel like, what if I'm the person that somehow upsets him so much that he just melts down? And like what if that happens to me and I've broken Weird Al? I don't know. I have to talk to my therapist about this. I'm not. I don't want anything to do with that.
What are you worried about? That's
I don't know.
seems like a thing to be worried
and I've
about.
never spoken that fear out loud. Now it's out in the universe, and I'm doomed.
Oh, do we need to make an edit?
If I vanish, please tell my story.
Oh, jeez.
What's some of the what's his favorite food?
I don't know. He's vegetarian or vegan, depending on the day. Yes. I think that he is a secret hoarder, not in a messy way, and his wife tamps that down pretty well, I think. And he's admitted that. Like that's not a secret either. I don't know. I don't have any Weird Al. There are no Weird Al secrets. He's just like a really nice, what you see is what you get kind of guy, and just very humble and very just a nice guy. I mean, honestly, like the idea that I am like even in his outer circle somewhere like is really an honor for me.
I'm surprised he never did a reality show.
He doesn't have to. He doesn't want to. Like, why bother? Like, I mean, honestly, like, there's no reason anyone should be doing a reality show. To be totally frank,
or Al,
and myself included. Yes, to be Al.
To be totally Al. We both share a love of TV, and
yes,
if you weren't doing reality TV and you could do anything, what would you do?
I would be working in sitcoms, 100%. Half-hour comedies are my jam, for sure. I love it. I love it all.
Do you have any ideas for like writing one of your own? Or
I don't. I really should get on that.
Maybe after the documentary.
I just thought over the years that you'd come up with some.
Yeah, you would think.
Idea.
Nope.
Well, you can make one about me.
Yeah. Legoland.
Okay, let's do a speed round.
We're losing momentum here, so let's pick it up. We're doing
Jeff's
a speed round.
answering. Well,
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to ask. Okay.
Well, I feel the urgency of Joelle's dogs yipping at my heels here.
I feel the urgency. I need to go. So poor Jeff. He's like, this is not what I expected.
I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite Halloween costume?
I had surgery for an appendix issue, and I couldn't walk the parade route in West Hollywood. So my friend put me in a wheelchair. We decorated it like Cherry, and I dressed as Pee Wee Herman. And that remains my favorite Halloween costume.
Number one movie quote of all time?
It would probably be "Don't Call Me Shirley" from Airplane.
Airplane is one of the best comedies of all time. Not appropriate these days, but
very quotable.
I think we'll wrap it up because we've taken enough of your time, Jeff, and Joelle has to feed her dog. But
yeah,
why don't you give us one more plug? Maybe give the website information, or if people want to still donate to your film, tell us what they need to do.
SHOWGALSthemovie.com. You can see the thing that's not our trailer. You can make a tax-deductible donation through the Film Collaborative, which is a 501c3 charity organization that helps filmmakers make their dreams come true.
And if somebody wants to pitch you a sitcom idea to make, where can they reach you?
Yeah, please find me on my social media. Link in bio. I don't know. Is that a thing?
You're just not good at promoting yourself, Jeff, are you?
Yeah, slide into my DMs. DM for collab. There it is. Got it.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on Podcetera.
Sure. I'm sure they'll be lining up.
Maybe I'm doing this myself, Jeff. I don't know.
Joelle just like bailed, and I love that about her.
That's Joelle.
This was a ton of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share Podcetera. And be sure to follow and like the series wherever you enjoy podcasts.
For Podcetera, I'm Renee Lego.
And I'm Joelle Ludovich. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.